with hope and resiliency. Here's a live look at the Toronto waterfront at this hour, where the city will launch 2 fireworks displays in less than 30 minutes.
And a look at the Distillery Winter Village, where there's a New Year's bash underway with live music and fireworks at midnight. We have a crew at the scene talking to people celebrating the new year.
And over to Celebration Square in Mississauga. It's been turned into a massive dance floor with a lineup of the year's biggest artists who will keep people dancing all night long, way past midnight.
And of course, south of the border, New Yorkers are piling into the iconic Times Square for the famous New Year's Eve ball drop. We'll hear from a reporter live from New York City in moments.
From 299 Queen Street West, I'm Scott Hurst.
And I'm Arda Zakarian, and this is CP24's special New Year's Eve coverage.
We're not just wearing these hats for any reason. We're here partying with everybody else, and we'll be counting down the new year and checking in on celebrations across the GTA, across Canada, and around the world. We'll
also recap some of the big news stories we covered in 2022 and look ahead to what's next in 2023.
First, let's go live to the Distillery Winter Village, where CP24's Steve Ryan is standing by for us.
Steve, many people are gearing up for a fireworks display at midnight. How's the party so far?
The party is getting started, let me tell you. It is absolutely jam-packed with people here waiting to count down and bring in the new year. Lots of music. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but there's great music going on, lots of food and drink as well. And countdown has begun. People are already started their own countdowns here, and at midnight we are told there's going to be a 7 to 9 minute spectacular fireworks display that's going to take place here at the Distillery District, and we will bring that to you once it does start. And this will be the first celebration here, a New Year's celebration in this Distillery District. So, you know, the people here that organize this are quite excited about that whole prospect as well. I'll send it back to you guys.
Steve, I love your hat. Great addition to this New Year's bash. And here's a live look at the waterfront in Toronto, where the city is hosting 2 fireworks displays. The shows this year are meant to represent hope for the coming year and are part of the Stronger Together program, which honors the resiliency of Torontonians during the COVID-19 pandemic. The high-altitude displays will be viewable from anywhere that has views of Toronto's Inner Harbor.
And expect some road closures as well from now until 1 a.m. That includes Queens Quay West eastbound between Bathurst Street and Yonge Street, and Queens Quay East eastbound between Yonge Street and Lower Sherbourne Street.
Over to Mississauga now. Here's a live look at Celebration Square, where you can see it's been transformed into a dance floor. That's a party I want to be at.
That is the party.
Visitors can skate, check out live performances from Banks and Ranks and Preston Pablo, and check out food trucks, skating, and face glitter bars.
That is the place to be right now. And as we look ahead to the new year, we're also looking back at some of the big stories of 2022. COVID-19 stories once again were top of mind as Canada ended pandemic restrictions and rolled out its bivalent vaccine campaign. In the meantime, Ontario struggled with the healthcare crisis, including overwhelmed hospitals and pediatric ICUs, and a triple threat of COVID-19, RSV, and the flu. For more on this, we're joined by Dr. Andrew Bizzari, Executive Director, Social Medicine and Population Health at University Health Network. Dr. Bizzari, first, Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.
Happy New Year, Scott. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. So despite a lot of changes in pandemic restrictions, 2022 was in fact the deadliest year for COVID-19 in Canada. What are your greatest concerns about how we're dealing with COVID-19 right now, heading into another year with the pandemic?
Yeah, I think the worry, Scott, is that we're becoming comfortably numb with what we're seeing play out. I mean, as you mentioned, I think most people who are listening tonight or who read the newspaper or see online that this year had the highest amount of deaths versus 2021 or 2020 would probably be surprised, given what I would really see as a failure of communication on this front. I think we've talked about this throughout the pandemic, about how important public health communication is going to need to be, given the challenges now that we're coming up close to 3 years in this pandemic. And when you see a death toll like it is at the highest rate we've had, it's hard not to see our policies and communications as being really ableist and really comfortably numb to the fact that we are accepting now avoidable deaths when it comes to COVID. And again, where there has this real spillover effect in many of the other challenges in accessing healthcare and what we've seen in terms of cancer diagnosis and later rates, higher rates, of cancer diagnosis and worse outcomes in terms of a lot of prevented and delayed surgeries now. So I think those are some of the real concerns. I mean, we also have to be very clear and be honest that coming into the pandemic, we were already one of the countries with the lowest hospital beds per capita. We've seen nurses as heroes throughout the pandemic. Before the pandemic, having a low per capita rate in terms of the amount of nurses that were available. We're seeing more and more nurses under a huge amount of duress. We have to get this right in terms of our human resourcing, in terms of the way that we're respecting and paying health workers, and the fact that we're still in a gridlock when it comes to the feds and the provinces in terms of health transfers. That's really concerning.
Dr. Bazzeri, the bivalent vaccine rollout is, of course, a big help, but there aren't a lot of people taking it. What can be done to get more people boosted?
Yeah, I think, we talked a little bit about the real importance of there needing to be the communications piece, getting out to people. I think the fact that, we have to be really clear about the data. We have less than a quarter of people who are over 12 having a booster dose. I mean, that is something that is really concerning. Again, when we have now access to booster doses or bivalent boosters that are in place, and we're seeing higher rates of hospitalizations and deaths. The fact that we have a booster uptake at that rate when Canada was sort of leading the world, or at least in the top 5, it's a real drop in terms of where we are in terms of vaccine uptake. So I think what we saw work really well throughout the pandemic is getting communities out front and leading the charge in terms of how this needs to be rolled out. We can't be waiting in hospitals or building clinics to believe that that's where people can show up. And we saw a lot of this play out with respect to paid sick leave. We've looked at a lot of evaluations over the last 2 to 3 years, and neighborhoods and jurisdictions that had access to paid sick leave actually had 20 to 25% higher vaccine uptake. So we have to see this in terms of both the individual communication, but also the policies in place.
So what type of reinvestment is needed to stabilize care in Canada?
Well, I think we need to really look at, one, we are still without a agreement with the feds and the provinces in terms of a renewed health transfer. And we cannot be in a place where we have potentially billions of dollars that are not invested in public health care. When you look at how we stack up against other countries, we've talked about hospital beds, we've talked about nursing staff. It's also clear on primary care access. That's something where there's 1 to 2 million people who don't have access to family health team or primary care provider. And that's where we also spend less dollars in terms of comparison to other countries. So we have to be really clear on how we invest those dollars into more public and primary care teams, family health teams, team-based models. We have to move away from fee-for-service based models and sort of solo practitioner ways to access care, and actually to team-based models where people can get out, be able to get access to a primary care provider. And we also have to be really clear again about how we have not been able to disentangle, and we should not disconnect, the hospital crisis from the homelessness crisis, where we have to be thinking about our investments upstream. We currently, in the hospital tonight, there's close to 100% capacity in terms of the hospital beds. We usually are operating at higher than that, given the number of respiratory illnesses that are out there. And we also know in the shelter system that it's at virtually 100%, if not higher. And so that's leaving people with nowhere else to go but the emergency department or public spaces or parks. And we know that that has real tragic health outcomes for people and real utilization issues for a healthcare system.
There's also concerning new evidence about the impact of long COVID, but there's not an overall consensus. What should we be aware of in the new year with this developing disease?
Yeah, I think you raise a really important piece here that we, again, pre-pandemic, we can talk about, and it's very clear with the data, about how stretched our healthcare system was. When you throw in the aspects now around COVID, which again has not gone away. We are still seeing, again, the rates in terms of the hospitalizations and deaths being at higher than the years before. We're also seeing about 5 to 10% of cases from some of the best evaluations around long COVID, which is a real syndrome. It's a real disease condition that is really debilitating people, and it is really having serious costs both to one's well-being, but also to economies. And it's almost like people are afraid to talk about COVID anymore when you read certain headlines about staffing shortages or challenges in terms of being able to staff various settings. The reality of long COVID and COVID is so seemingly been pushed out of the public discourse. But the reality is, when you look at the data and we look at what we're seeing from more and more cases of long COVID, this is another disease condition in an already very stretched healthcare system. So if we don't address the resources and change the way we deliver care and prioritize these conditions, it's going to be the same neighborhoods that are now having higher rates of COVID, have higher rates of long COVID, on top of the higher rates of chronic disease and other cancer rates that really are just unacceptable. And I think the key piece of this is, going into the new year, it's not to be a downer. We can prevent these deaths. These things are avoidable. We've known what can work. We've seen various models work throughout the country. We just have to double down on them. We have to scale them. And I think we have to be really serious in what we expect from policymakers when it comes to the protections.
Dr. Andrew Bozzari, thanks so much for coming on this New Year's Eve. Happy New Year's to you and all your loved ones, and we appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
Happy New Year's to you both, and all best for 2023.
It's now 11:41, 4 degrees. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24. Here's a live look at Times Square this hour, where revelers have gathered to watch the ball drop. All this and more coming up next. Stay with us. Welcome back. 2022 saw a lot of setbacks when it came to Canadians' checkbooks, from sky-high gas prices to rising food prices to home prices going through the roof. Many Canadians experienced some form of financial setback, but 2023 is a new year, and with some advice on financial planning heading into 2023, we are joined by Michelle Hung, author and founder of The Sassy Investor. Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us. And as we were talking about, there's so much that Canadians are dealing with. How can they go into 2023 with a fresh mind and be able to tackle all of those issues?
Great. Thanks for having me here. Going into 2023, I know we had such a rough 2022 with, like you mentioned, high costs of everything in life, and with the Canadian government raising interest rates 7 times. So just like from mortgages and all types of debt costs going up. The one thing I can say for sure is be really conscious of your spending going forward, and also, of course, create a budget and really just be conscious of your numbers and make it a habit. Kind of like I always say, when it comes to your money, you should have a money routine, kind of like having a skincare routine.
Ah, okay.
So how can Canadians actually work this budget? What is the first step to telling clients of yours about a budget, especially with so much uncertainty coming into next year?
Yeah, the first thing I tell them when it comes to tackling a budget is really laying out what is it that you want, because a budget is it's about planning for your future goals, so you have your long-term goals, but also while trying to manage your day-to-day spending, your the things that have immediate priorities. So lots of planning and having conversations with your family as well. So if you have kids who you can converse with, and making them aware that this is what we're able to do for the year, because every person in the family will be affecting the budget. So having conversations like, maybe if there are a lot of kids activities that they want to do, but they can't, so they're unable to, it's not feasible, well, ask them what is the most important to you. So, it gives them, the option to choose, but also you get to teach them some money lessons as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that, more about the setting a budget as a family, keeping in mind not only the children, but also other members of the family. How do you suggest people do that?
like I said, just having a conversation, just including them and being very transparent with them, and just like letting them know, especially children, money doesn't grow on trees, and you can have what you want. You just have to, set your priorities straight, but also making sure you're saving for the long term and making sure you're not spending everything now because, there could be an emergency that comes up. Life happens, so you want to prepare for that.
So, of course, they're saving for the long term, saving for emergencies. Inflation is increasing. Prices are going up at the grocery store, trying to rent, trying to buy a home, all that kind of stuff. How do you budget with all that in mind for maybe some fun and some vacation in there?
Just planning ahead, and especially for vacations are like 6-8 months down the road. You definitely want to be, these are big ticket items. You want to be planning ahead. I would say, set aside an account for vacations. So, you're not mixing it in with your day-to-day spending. You're setting it aside. So when the time comes, you have the money for it and you're not, rushing to, put it on your credit card because it's not going to be much fun after you come back on that vacation. And as for like fun activities in the meantime, I would suggest using like a prepaid Visa card. That way, you're not going over budget.
Yeah.
Great advice. Okay, what about if you're really struggling, you're in a dire situation, when should you call for help and who should you call?
Well, if you're struggling to make these debt payments, then there are nonprofit credit counseling that's available. They offer one-on-one free counseling. They're going to present to you a solution, and it should be a solution that, like, when you walk away, it works for you and it makes you better off. So unfortunately, there are organizations out there that don't have your best interest. They charge some hefty fees, and they may even worsen your credit. So just be wary of that.
And finally, just one more quick question. What do you tell people that are terrified looking at next year, just in general, for their bottom line, for their paycheck, inflation and all that kind of stuff? What's your first little bit of advice to them saying, don't worry about it, we'll get through this?
Yeah, we'll get through this. It's not permanent. These situations, like we go through economic cycles, everything is temporary if you make it so. But the last thing you want to do is not look at your numbers. You have to really pay attention to it. And that's just going to ease a lot of the financial anxiety. You just have to tackle it head on first.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for being here, for giving us this great advice. We're prepared now heading into 2023. Michelle Hung is the author and founder of The Sassy Investor. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. And Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Great. Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Happy New Year. Thanks for coming in. Well, New Yorkers are celebrating before the ball drop in Times Square at this hour. For more, let's go live to CNN's Chris Wynn. So, Chris, we're counting down the minutes to the ball drop. How's the excitement building in Times Square right now?
Hey, Scott and Art, it's so great to be with you. We're getting a slight break from the heavier rain that we were experiencing earlier today. So your timing is perfect as we are just moments away from bringing in the new year. The show has been a lot of fun in the past hour. We heard from New Edition, Duran Duran. We even saw a marriage proposal that brought smiles to a lot of faces out in the crowd tonight. Now, as we take a look at a wider shot of Times Square, you can see the thousands of people who have made their way in to take part in the festivities. Revelers started showing up at around 8 o'clock this morning, so they've been out here for a very long time. A very long time. The celebration is a return to normalcy, as you know. The past 2 years, the events were scaled back because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Last year, New York City allowed only 15,000 people. The year before, the event was closed off to the public. So this is a lot of fun as people get ready for the ball to drop. Another shot, we can show you the stage where, there's not much going on right now, but we know that there's going to be more coming up in a little bit when a performer takes the stage at the stroke of midnight. The Waterford Crystal Ball went through a dress rehearsal of its own yesterday as the Times Square Alliance did a test run. For now, it appears that all systems are a go. Celebrity chef Emeril Lagasse will do the honors. He's going to be a part of the group flipping the switch at the stroke of midnight. That ball will then take 60 seconds to drop once they flip the switch, and then you'll see 1 ton of confetti blasted into the air. So can't wait for that. Your timing again is perfect as we celebrate New Year's Eve here in New York City. Back to you in Canada.
Less than 9 minutes to go. We are
Here we go.
excited. Thank you so much for this, Chris. Chris Wynn is from CNN. It's now 11:51, exactly 8 minutes and 40-something seconds left. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24. Here's a live look at Celebration Square in Mississauga. It's been turned into a massive dance floor with a lineup of the year's biggest artists. Plus,
another live look at the waterfront where people have gathered for Toronto's fireworks display tonight. We'll be back with more New Year's Eve coverage after a short break. Just a couple minutes till the ball drop in New York, until the clock strikes midnight here as well.
welcome back. We have 6 minutes to go to ring in the new year, and the TTC and Go Transit trips are free tonight. The TTC is offering free rides until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. No fare is required on Go Transit as of 7 p.m. until 3:30 a.m., but the Up Express service ends before midnight. Transit in York, Brampton, and Mississauga are also free tonight to make sure everyone has a safe ride home.
Yeah, we're back in our party hats because we're just minutes away from 12. Bike Share Toronto is offering a special price tonight if you prefer to pedal home. A single trip costs just $1. That's about a 70% discount. Overage fees do apply if your commute home takes longer than 30 minutes.
Here's a look at how countries around the world rang in 2023. New Zealand had a fireworks show in Auckland. The display lit up the Sky Tower and the area around the Auckland Harbour Bridge. The celebration was held after COVID-19 forced to be canceled a year ago.
And fireworks rang out in Athens as the Greek capital celebrated the start of the new year. A sea of color filled the sky as a fireworks display was held over the Acropolis to usher in the start of 2023.
The new year arrived in Australia at 8 a.m. our time. More than 1 million people gathered to take in the massive fireworks display over the Sydney Harbour for the first time since 2020.
Well, that is a magnificent display. Hong Kong ushered in the new year with a dramatic light show set to music. Crowds gathered along the shore of the harbour while many boats took in the celebration from the water as well. A whole lot of boats you can see there.
A giant bell was rung in a pavilion in Seoul to ring in the new year. It's the first time the bell has tolled since the start of the pandemic. It was rung 33 times in a tradition dating back to the Joseon dynasty.
In Taiwan, fireworks lit up the night sky after a minute-long countdown to 2023. The Asian nation welcomed New Year with a large firework display over one of the world's tallest buildings, the Taipei 101.
The traditional bell ringing ceremony was held across Japan to welcome 2023. This is an ancient tradition for Buddhists who believe that humans are born with 108 worldly desires, which can be removed when a bell is struck 108 times. The bell starts ringing in the old year and finishes right as the clock strikes midnight.
All right, we are less than 3 minutes away from midnight here in our time. Let's go live to the Distillery District, where CP24's Steve Ryan is standing by live. Steve, we are getting very close.
Yes, less than 3 minutes, Scotty, and you can feel the anticipation in the air, the atmosphere here at the Distillery District, where, by the way, it's their first time celebrating a New Year's Eve, and what a job they've done. It's been very successful, sold out, and there's been a lot of very happy people here tonight that we've been speaking with. Now, I'm joined by Wish, who is one of the many people that are here tonight. So your thoughts on tonight?
Yeah, it's very exciting to be here, despite the cold, but great atmosphere, great music, great vibes all around. Yeah.
What do you hope for a city, for a country, for a province in 2023? What's your hopes?
Wishing everyone good health, good wealth for everybody. Wishing everyone a very prosperous new year, of course.
What do you think of the atmosphere down here before we start the countdown? I've been talking all night about just how festive it is. It just feels like a really neat place to be. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, after everything that's happened the past 2 years, it's really exciting to be around a lot of new people again, making feel like it's normal. And yeah, it's just great to see a whole crowd of people after everything. Yeah.
Okay, so let me give you the final words before it comes back to me. What would you like to say for 2023 to people that are watching?
Everyone have a blessed, healthy, happy new year.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you. So our countdown is going to start soon. I'll just let you get a listen to what's going on here. I'll just put my mic out for a sec. So there's lots of noise being made right now. Asked to make noise prior to them counting in the new year.
It's just a nice vibe all around.
Here we go.
Happy New Year!
All right, there it is.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Let's
Happy New Year,
listen
Scotty.
in and see the festivities.
Arda. There's our fireworks. Let's just 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, now we're looking live at the Harbourfront, the City of Toronto fireworks display. Of course, a lot of people taking in this incredible fireworks display along the waterfront. And man, from what we saw, a couple of the shots there, those fireworks are looking fantastic on the waterfront tonight. Happy New Year to everyone watching. Thanks for staying with us. And happy 2023. Freezing a little bit right there, so let's check out Times Square. That's the one, Arda, Times Square. The Big Apple. Look at those people smooching.
What's happening here?
What are we watching?
We came in for the money shot, okay? This is what we were waiting for.
This is what we're waiting for, yeah. Arda, happy New Year to you as well.
Yes, happy New Year to you and to your whole family.
We got party hats. We have,
horns.
Noisemakers.
Happy New Year from us to you.
Yeah, one of the first years without pandemic restrictions in a couple of years there in New York City, Times Square, as Chris Wynn from CNN just told us. A lot of people are filing in, of course. They have stage performances. It still goes for hours, I believe, well into the night. And then they go to the West Coast for some more performances as well. So the party, shall we say, is just beginning in New York City.
1 ton of confetti that's going to be strewn across this huge crowd.
I don't envy the people that have to then clean that up the next day.
Yes.
As we look back live at the Distillery fireworks show where we were chatting with Steve Ryan earlier.
Let's see if we can bring in Steve Ryan, who is taking in this fireworks display.
Steve, what's it like down there right now after the fireworks and everyone's enjoying themselves?
Absolutely. We're right underneath the fireworks, and the shots that Timmy was able to get as well, I'm sure you saw over the Christmas tree, is just spectacular. So, thanks for joining me. I didn't get... What'd you think?
Fantastic. First time out, and it was spectacular.
Wasn't it something to see being so close here?
Absolutely. Something to experience, and fantastic weather.
And having all these people being able to get together after being separated for so long.
Oh, absolutely. Through COVID and everything, it's nice to see everyone and enjoy everything.
You know, are you one that makes resolutions for New Year's?
I am. I'm going to try, and hopefully I can stick with. I make them every year. I don't stick with them, but I will try this year.
Do you care to share, or you rather keep it to yourself?
Well, actually, weight is always one. You know, take care of myself.
Wait.
Fortunately, I always put everyone before myself, and
because that's your mom.
But I'm a mom.
Moms always put themselves first. That's why moms are so great.
There's a few things, and basically just let the bad vibes out and clear myself up, and looking forward to a great new year.
That's a great answer. I'm going to pull you into this now as well. So, what's your answer? Can you help beat those ones?
No. No.
What do you think? What do you think of tonight?
Awesome. Nice. Beautiful and very nice. First time here, so yeah.
I happened to, as we were broadcasting this, I saw you two just put your arm around each other when the New Year came in. I just thought that was so nice, and you know, you're very lucky to have that.
Absolutely, we're lucky we have each other. Yes. Absolutely, through good and bad. Absolutely, he sticks with me all the time.
You're a good man, and thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. You too. So that's just a snippet of the type of people down here that we spoke with tonight. They're just so happy to be able to gather, and when the New Year came in, and it wasn't just that couple. I saw many people embrace their loved ones, those that they're close to, and it's a good sight to see. It's nice to be able to talk about something as positive as this. And before we get back to you, let's remind everybody, guys, about if you're drinking tonight and you're watching this, please don't drink and drive. The police have been on this message all night, and let's remember that the TTC is free, so no excuses. Send it back to you guys.
So important. Thank you so much for that message, and good to celebrate the new year with you, Steve. It's been such a pleasure.
All right, Steve Ryan's going to go and enjoy the rest of that party, I bet.
Yes.
So with every new year comes New Year's resolutions, of course, and many of those resolutions revolve around health, nutrition, and exercise. And for more on how to create healthier, more sustainable habits in the new year, we're joined by Uva Major-Hirschkopf, registered dietitian and permission coach for high-achieving women. Thanks so much for joining us on this New Year's Eve. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So can you talk about how people should consider why they're making these New Year's resolutions? Oftentimes, you see people pick up some lofty resolutions from last year knowing they're not going to stick.
Absolutely. I think people do that all the time. I think one of the most common mistakes that people make when they're setting resolutions is picking almost the trendy ones, the ones that we see all the time, the one that, it seems like everybody else is making without actually asking themselves whether that's something that's important to them. And I think it's really important for us to remember that inertia is hard. Changing habits can be hard. And when it's not something that's actually something that we're motivated to do, it's not a goal, it's not a habit that really feels meaningful to you, it's going to be that much harder to then change it. And so, when we're picking ones, we want to make sure that we're doing something that the why is really actually important to us as well.
You're also a coach for high-achieving women in the corporate world who not only have a lot on their plate with their jobs, but then they go home and they have to deal with everything that has to do with their families. It always falls on women. Talk to us about how you help people navigate these obstacles.
Absolutely. And I think that's something really important to remember is, so often we're fed this line of, we all have the same 24 hours in the day, right? If something's important to you, you'll just do it without actually considering what people's lived experience is and sometimes what they're up against. And one of the things that I talk to my clients about, and especially the high achieving women, especially the women in the corporate world that I'm coaching, is that we need to think about the steps that we're making to any goal that we're setting, because so often when we're thinking from high achiever mode, it's what's the big goal that I want to do? What's the marathon almost, for an example, that I want to run, without thinking about what does step one look like, because our brains want to go there right away. And so, often I talk to my clients about what's the smallest achievable goal that we can do today. I heard someone, on who was interviewed right before about, sometimes we set goals year after year and we don't achieve them. And it's really hard to even take step one because we haven't really ever evaluated what that step one looks like. And what's a small thing that we can do today to move towards our goals, especially when we live busy lives, as opposed to trying to jump right from 0 to 100.
So what is your first bit of advice when it comes to making goals people will actually stick with? There's a lot to unpack here, of course, in terms of behavior change and habit formation. As you said, you can't go from 0 to 100 right away. This doesn't happen overnight.
Absolutely. So a couple of tips that I would always give to people when they're thinking about a goal they want to start is, number one, really understanding your why, right? So again, is this something that's actually important to you, and understanding why it's important to you. So if you're somebody who says that a goal they have is starting running in the new year or starting a business in the new year, it doesn't really matter what the goal is, but really clarifying why that's important to you, because the why is always going to get you farther than focusing on the specific thing that you're doing. And then taking it down to the smallest achievable goal that you can start with. And sometimes, especially for those who identify as high achievers, that can feel really silly, right? If you want to start running 5 miles a day, walking around the block doesn't feel quite as good as doing those 5 miles every single day. But what we're actually going for, and this is a common mistake that people make, is we're going over consistency over, the big impact we want to have on day one, right? We've all had that experience of when you say that you want to start an exercise goal or something, and you go to the gym and you work out as hard as you possibly can, and then you can't move for 4 weeks afterwards, right? We all would have been better off walking around the block consistently for a week or more, or whatever that looks like for you, until you add on to that. Because in the long run, you'll actually get farther than that stop and start action that so many people see time and time again, because they go for the harder goal. They try and do it all in a day, and then that actually sets them back in the long run.
Let's change over to children, too. We both have young children, and children can be fussy eaters. For example, I know my son is at grandma's house right now, and they fed him cookies before his dinner. Yes, I saw them do that. So how do you manage, first of all, getting kids back on track and becoming fussy eaters? How do you manage that? And also, lots of family gatherings now. How do you navigate around that as well?
That is a very loaded question. There's lots to unpack there. But there's a number of things. So setting goals with kids is the same thing, the same way that we would set goals for ourselves, right? It can't ever go, especially when we're coming out of this holiday season, when a lot of kids have been having exactly more sleepovers at grandma's house, more family gatherings, more times where they've been off schedule. We can't all of a sudden expect them to go totally back into routine from day one. And so it really is, again, setting those small things of, okay, what can we do tomorrow, right? If we're parenting small children and we're trying to shift back into routine, maybe it's we don't do the cookies before dinner and we go back into, a regular meal and snack schedule if things have been a little bit more all over the place, and just focus on what's one small change we can make every couple of days to shift our kids back. Maybe it's we do that and then we move back to only eating at the table if we've been eating in front of the TV. Because in that as well, over the course of a couple of weeks, we'll end up back where we want to be. Whereas if we try and again make a ton of behavior changes, I have 3 under 6. They don't take well to all of the sudden changing everything. And so we'll start the same cycle that we see with my adult clients as well.
All right, lots of great advice right there. Ahuva Madger-Hirschkopf, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And Happy New Year to you. Yes, thank you. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24. Here's a look back at Navy Pier in Chicago this hour, where people are celebrating 2023. We'll be back right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. 2022 was also a year dominated by headlines about the royal family. From the death of Queen Elizabeth II to the accession of King Charles to the drama behind the scenes for Harry and Meghan. For more on this, let's bring in CTV's royal commentator, Afia Hagen, who joins us from London. Afia, first of all, Happy New Year to you, and thank you so much for joining us. We know it's 5:20 in the morning right now, which is crazy. So thank you so much for getting up on New Year's Day for us.
No problem. Happy New Year to you guys.
You as well.
So let's talk about some of the headlines, including the Queen's funeral that happened not too long ago. Tell us how that has made an impact on royalty and history in general.
I mean, it really has been a tumultuous year for our royal family, and the death of Queen Elizabeth II in September was really a pivotal point of their whole year. I mean, the royals have just spent their first Christmas at Sandringham without Queen Elizabeth II, and her death, really tore up the royal family, to be honest. She was such a much-loved great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, a matriarch of the royal family. She had reigned for over 70 years, the longest reigning female monarch. And, she made such an impression on, the United Kingdom, the realms, and all of the Commonwealth. And actually to lose her, especially at the time where the United Kingdom is in some political turmoil, where people look to the royal family as their strength and their stay in this time, was quite difficult. And of course, that started the reign of King Charles III, which hasn't got off to the easiest start either. But the death of Queen Elizabeth in September was really a significant moment in the royal family, the end of an era and the start of a new one.
So with Charles now the king, what kind of leader can we expect from him?
Well, during the time of Prince Charles, the longest monarch in waiting, if you will, he has had such a long time to get used to that role and to be prepped for being King Charles III. He was an activist, very outspoken about climate change, about sustainability. And now that we're in his reign as king, he can't afford to be as outspoken as he was. He has to be much more neutral. So that's what we can expect from King Charles III, someone who's still going to underpin the issues that he feels strongly about, but isn't necessarily going to be as outspoken about them as he was. He is also going to be in charge of modernizing this royal family, this monarchy, this reign of the realms and the Commonwealth, because the royal family exists because of the people, because of their popularity, because of people still buying into them and what they stand for. And to do that, you're going to have to modernize for the next generation. So he is going to be in charge of that as well. Now, his first few months of his reign have you've had lots of family problems, things that have happened with Harry and Meghan. And of course, the Prince and Princess of Wales ascending to their new role as well and stepping into those roles. He's been guiding them into that. And of course, issues around Prince Andrew as well, who's recently been evicted from Buckingham Palace. It hasn't been easy for him in these past few months with the family issues. But as we go into 2023, King Charles III is going to have to look beyond the family and beyond the United Kingdom to the Commonwealth and the realms. You know, one of his mother's legacies was growing the Commonwealth to the number of countries it has now and added new member countries like Gabon last year. His job is going to be maintaining that Commonwealth if he wants it to be as strong and as significant as it has been in the past.
Afia, there's been a lot of drama with Harry and Meghan, and it might even continue depending on what he reveals in the book Spare that's coming out in January. But what were the biggest revelations for you from the latest documentary on Netflix?
Let me tell you, it's definitely going to continue. There's no might about it. With a title like Spare, we can definitely expect more revelations from the book, which is dropping on January the 10th. Look, I think there were so many revelations actually across the 6 parts of the documentary Harry and Meghan. I think we learned a lot about Prince Harry's relationship with his brother Prince William and the state, frankly, that it's in at the moment. We learned a lot about the revelations that were fed to the press and how Harry and Meghan felt about the press, the way that the press wrote about them. You know, I think that was really a huge part of the documentary as well. We learned how unsafe they went, how unsafe they felt, people like Tyler Perry stepping in to help them bridge to their new life. We learned about how they actually tried to stay part of the royal family, tried to be working royals. At that Sandringham summit, they put in a kind of half-in, half-out option, one that was rejected, that led to that argument with Prince William, with the then Prince Charles, now King Charles III, and Queen Elizabeth II. There was lots of things that we learned. We were kind of fleshed out of things that we already knew. Meghan Markle's feelings about her father, but we learned more about the argument there. We knew that Prince William and Prince Harry had a rift, but we learned more about what had actually happened. So there was lots of fleshing out of things that we already knew, but I can guarantee that Spare will bring us more revelations, so buckle up.
All right, CTV Royal commentator Afia Hagen, Happy New Year, and thanks so much for joining us at your hour there in the UK. Appreciate it.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24. Here's a live look at the bustling Times Square in the heart of New York City, where revelers are, of course, celebrating 2023. We'll be back with more party at the Distillery District back here at home after a short break. All right, welcome back, and let's go back live to the Distillery, where CP24's Steve Ryan is standing by for us once again. Steve.
Yeah, Scotty, what do they say? Build it, and they shall come. End it, and they shall leave. Everybody has gone. So we are wrapping this up here at the Distillery District. It was a great night for their very first time celebrating New Year's, bringing in the New Year here. It was fantastic. Everybody left very happy. So Happy New Year to all of our viewers, and to you, Scott, and to you, Arda, and thank you for the work that you've done with me tonight. I appreciate it, and here's hoping for a good, safe New Year in 2023. To the fact, you guys.
Absolutely. We're just so happy to spend New Year's with you and with you, Scott. Happy New Year to you, Steve. Appreciate all that you've done for us, and to all of our viewers. Happy New Year to everyone out there watching with us.
That's a wrap on CP24's New Year's Eve special. Thanks for joining us.
As we head to break, we'll leave you with a look at how some of the CP24 family rang in 2023. Have a very happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Star!